Got a Michael review for you. Some sunglasses to add some flair as well as to pay tribute to the man himself. Anyway, when talking about MJ, we unfortunately have to address the allegations, so let's get that out of the way. I am a lifelong Michael Jackson fan who had a brief falling out around the 2005 trial. I was a kid then and didn't really know how to properly research an issue before forming an opinion. Though alas, that seems to be the approach that many adults take as well. Once I actually did do a deep dive, it became clear to me that Michael Jackson is an innocent man. The reasons are vast, but I want this to be a review of the movie and not a legal brief. So in short, he was investigated by the FBI for over a decade with no wrongdoing found. He was acquitted in a court of law, and his accusers consistently present credibility issues and monetary incentives. Michael Jackson is a human being more than worth celebrating. There is a persistent media agenda against him, which clearly factored into the Rotten Tomatoes critics' consensus, which sits at about 38, 39%, something like that. Many critics cited the lack of allegations as a flaw, which means that they failed to acknowledge that this movie takes place from 1966 to 1988, well before any allegations ever existed. And it's also no secret that this production was quite troubled. There was some legal hurdles and reshoots that forced a narrower focus. And it's also highly likely, as suggested by the end of the movie, I guess sort of a spoiler alert, that there's going to be more story to tell, meaning that we're likely going to get the later years covered. So clearly, many critics simply wanted MJ to be painted as a villain. On the contrary, the audience score sits at about 97%. And while I do not bow down to the flawed metrics of Rotten Tomatoes, the gap here is worth acknowledging as a reflection of the public's desire to see Michael's humanity on screen. And as for the movie itself, I am going to give it 5 stars. And, I think I can do that while also being a little bit disappointed by some of the things that we missed in the movie. I missed seeing Janet. I missed seeing Diana Ross, The Wiz. But even without a troubled production, gaps are going to be inevitable in a biopic. Michael's life is so particularly dense that it truly deserves like a 10-episode miniseries to be fully satisfied. I would love to see a director's cut, but what we did get here, a 2-hour journey through the first major chunk of his life, that was incredible. It functioned perfectly as a standalone story with a clear hero, a villain, and a narrative that concludes a pivotal chapter of a larger legacy. And I've heard criticisms that MJ is simply depicted as this saint, but by most accounts, he was exceptionally kind. And this also doesn't mean that the film ignores any flaws, it depicts his paralyzing shyness, his lack of assertiveness, and a perfectionism that bordered on obsession regarding his art and his physical appearance. To me, those are deeply human flaws. The movie does hit the crucial beats of his rise to superstardom and his struggle for independence. How could we ever depict it all? Elizabeth Taylor, Brooke Shields, We Are the World, these things are absent, but that's what documentaries are for. This film's job was to humanize a man who has been lied about more than perhaps anyone in history. It isn't just like a music video supercut. It's a tale of a transformative artist finding his voice. Judge a film by what it is and not by what you want it to be. The performances are phenomenal. Jafar Jackson doesn't just impersonate Michael, he captures the inflections, the body language, and the specific mixture of delicacy and steel. He and Coleman Domingo are just as deserving of an Academy Award as anybody in recent memory. There is one transcendent musical number towards the end of the movie. I'm not going to spoil it, but it perfectly captured the essence of Michael Jackson. In retrospect, this will likely be seen as sort of a part 1, the rise, with a sequel perhaps depicting a sort of swift and sudden fall from grace, so to speak. This film chooses to be a celebration, but it isn't surface level. It explores the abuse he suffered, his eccentricities, his love for film and animals, his humanitarianism, the racial strife he experienced, the Pepsi incident, and the early stages of his physical transformation. I am a fan, yes, but I believe I've explained my stance beyond mere fandom. Don't be the cynical person who demands a negative version of a historical figure just to satisfy a narrative. If you went into this looking for, the scandals of 1993, just remember that that word was not attached to Michael until years after this movie takes place. This movie concludes with the bad tour, and it was nothing short of badass.